Welcome to Your City Connections, where you get to meet entertaining and informative guests. Guests such as an artist with a brush or with a camera, and guest with a violin. City Connections, providing insightful interviews with favorite son Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb. To city commissioners, the mayor. Interviews with a rodeo queen, to beauty queen, and even a NBA player. Now, join Steve Kime as he discusses another engaging topic on City Connections.
Hello, Colonel. How we doing?
Steve, how you doing?
Great.
Thanks for coming out here.
Good to see you. And it's good to see you, and welcome to City Connections. I'm Steve Kime, and as you know, I have the very distinct pleasure of meeting some great individuals, unique individuals, and we go to some great places to communicate to everyone what's going on in our great city. And my special guest today is Colonel Paco
LaHaye.
LaHaye.
That's right.
I was getting to that, but I want to make sure I had the Paco part.
No.
Well, Paco, this is an impressive, to me it's a jet. I don't know anything about it. What can you tell us about it?
Well, this is known as the T-38 Talon.
Okay.
So when you're going through the phases of our undergraduate pilot training here, some students, after their T6 training, they will splinter off into different phases. Most will go to the T1, but a few of them will track over into this T-38 Talon. And when you go through the program, if you graduate successfully from T-38s, then chances are you're going to go on into the operational Air Force and fly a fighter, aircraft, or a bomber.
I see. Well, they're amazingly clean to me. They're very, very clean.
Well, we have great maintainers on the ground here who take good care of these T-38s.
Well, appreciate you joining me today, and we appreciate you joining us today on City Connections. We're going to talk about the relationship with Vance Air Force Base in the city of Enid, and a little bit about Paco's role, and also about the runway replacement project that's going on. So we have several topics that we'll be talking about today on City Connections. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to City Connections. Thank you for joining us today. And again, my special guest, Paco LaHaye, Colonel Paco LaHaye. And you got so many titles, help me keep them all straight.
I know.
Well, we're speaking of titles, Installation Manager at Vance Air Force Base. What in the world is an installation manager, Paco?
Yeah, that's a pretty good term, Steve. First of all, thanks for being here, out here at Vance Air Force Base. My role is installation manager. The official military term is called Mission Support Group Commander.
Okay.
And the way I best describe that, it's like being a city manager of a small town. In this case, I'm a city manager of Vance Air Force Base. And the way I also describe the base and what we do here, like our mission here is undergraduate pilot training. Well, it takes different teams, special teams, to get all the things done for a successful mission. So first of all, there's the instruction of the pilots, the student pilots, teaching them how to fly. There's also maintaining the aircraft, in which we have great contractors on the ground who take care of the jets that fly up in the air for those student pilots. And then of course, if the pilots get sick, then there's healthcare, which is through our medical group. And those are all different teams. Everything else that you can imagine that falls under the purview of a city manager, that's what I do. And that's a very diverse, multifunctional lane of different activities out there, from the fire department, emergency management response, to security forces, but we get into just morale and welfare, recreational programs for the airmen. We get into human resources hiring, landscaping, contracting, engineering, communications, the network. So it's just everything that becomes the backbone of a city, a small town. That's what I do, me and my team. And it's such a phenomenal experience here, and it's great. So I really appreciate the time here. It's truly a blessing to be the Mission Support Group Commander here at Vance.
You bet. Well, we want to talk about the role that Vance plays in the Enid community, but let's focus first part of our interview about you a little bit. In some of my research, I found out that you ended up in Colorado Springs. You went to this small school called the Air Force Academy.
Yes,
so
sir.
you graduated from the academy. Tell us a little bit about your your academic and also your military service,
Well,
and how you got to Vance.
And that's a long and windy road there,
Okay,
Steve.
in 20 words or less.
Okay, so real quick, obviously Colorado's a beautiful state. So Air Force Academy graduated in 1993, and that was an awesome experience. But moving out into the Air Force, I'm a financial manager by trade. So that's really the core function of what I do throughout the Air Force in the span of my career. So I went through, in my earlier stages as a lieutenant and captain, I went through different certifications to basically become a chief financial officer, or a comptroller as we call it in the military, to multiple levels, eventually being a senior leader who can handle the budget and operate a budget. And through that time, I've worked at several levels. I've worked at the wing level a couple of times. I've worked at what they call the MAJCOM, the Major Command level. And of course, I've done a staff job at the Pentagon, working the budget at that level of responsibility. And it also took me across many locations. So I'm very fortunate to have been at places stateside. I've been stationed in Georgia, DC for the Pentagon. I've been in Mississippi. I've been in Alabama, Maxwell Air Force Base, and then of course overseas, which I've spent quite a lot of time over there. I've been at Stuttgart, Germany, Spangdahlem, Ramstein, Germany, but also Korea, and I've done a stint in the Azores. Have you ever heard of the Azores?
Yes, but I couldn't tell you if that was an animal or if it was an island.
Right, well, it's a group of islands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it actually belongs to Portugal, but we have a little base out there called Lodges Field. So just spanning the globe, a lot of experience in financial management. And my last base last year, I was at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. And that's where the Air Force just blessed me with this wonderful opportunity to become a mission support group commander here at Vance, so I can lead in that capacity. And it's such a rare and special opportunity to be here at this point in time in my career.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell, we have a unique studio set today. We're at Vance Air Force Base here in Enid, Oklahoma. And we're inside a rather large hangar, but I think all hangars are large, if you think about it. But we have special T-38s behind us, as the Colonel mentioned earlier. Colonel, tell us about, with your time that you've been here in Enid, tell us about the relationship between Vance and the city of Enid and the community. What kind of relationship do you sense is going on?
Well, what I picked up on up front, and I've been here a year, in my 23 years of Air Force service, I have never felt a stronger relationship between a base and the local community. I've moved about 11 times, as I mentioned, stateside and abroad, and the support here, the enduring support, is phenomenal and amazing. Everything we work together in partnership. Air Force Community Partnership is a program out there, and from all the city leadership to the base leadership, we've worked on many initiatives that are going to benefit both the base and the city, and that's been just a total full cooperation all the way. But also when there's concerns, there's possible encroachment issues, but if it's between airspace or resources in the region, energy usage, water concerns, all those things are worked proactively to make sure that we avoid encroachment. So just a phenomenal relationship, and I've never seen it stronger. And this is a very unique, special relationship that you don't see really in other bases in other states.
And you're not the first person to tell me that, they've shared that. Colonel, you talked a little bit about your specific role as installation manager, and also AKA a city manager of the base.
That's right.
There's a lot of people know that Vance Air Force Base is south or southwest of the community, but oftentimes they really don't know what Vance is all about. And kind of in a concise manner, can you kind of just give us the overall role of Vance Air Force Base? People are aware that people are trained, or pilots are trained out here, but kind of give us an overview of that role of Vance Air Force Base.
Well, I can tell you at any given time, through what I call the pipeline of undergraduate pilot training here at Vance, we are probably working with about 500 student pilots. And that's a large crowd to train and become newly minted pilots with their wings on the chest. But now through attrition and through the rigors of the program, we end up graduating about 300 overall. Now that, to me, that has strategic implications here, and it is highly visible. What we do here in Enid, America is extremely important, and I know senior leadership is always monitoring what we're doing out here. I can tell you this, that if If there's any disruption in our pilot training out here, there will be discussion through our chain of command to figure out how we get this back on track. But we are one of 4 pilot training operations throughout the Air Force. This is the 4th busiest airfield in the Air Force. And anything can happen along the way to cause a disruption. And so every time something tweaks or goes a little bit off, there is a reporting chain because there's such high visibility here on what we do. It's extremely important.
My mother-in-law is in a retirement home, and she's surrounded by a bunch of World War II vets and that live in this retirement home. And it's amazing when I speak with these gentlemen that they were advanced, you know, way back when. And so you know that even though this is going on in Enid, Oklahoma, it has worldwide implications. It's just amazing.
Absolutely, and I know during graduations, the wing commander will talk about fellow advanced graduates and some of the things that they move on and become wing commanders, general officers, astronauts, test pilots to the next generation of fighters, etc. The list goes on. A lot of great people, and Air Force Chief of Staff, a lot of them, they come from this training program here at Vance.
Well, enough about the colonel, okay? We're going to switch gears for a little bit. No, I really wanted to provide you a little insight into Colonel Paco LaHaye, so you know a little bit about him, so when you see him, say, you know, I saw you on the show the other day, and I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're going to come back after this short break, and one of the key reasons that we're here, we want to talk about the runway repair, replace project, and we'll find out more about that in just a moment. Thanks for staying with us on City Connections. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to City Connections. I'm Steve Kime. Thank you for staying with us today. My special guest, Colonel Paco LaHaye. And we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about one of the key reasons why we're out here. There's a lot of construction effort going on at the runway, and I guess you would call it the runway replacement project. Say that real quick, runway replacement. Right. Tell us about the runway that is being replaced, if you will, the length, and just some characteristics about the runway. Glamorous statistics of a runway, if that's possible.
I'll give you the top line numbers there. So the outside runway project, it is a repair and mostly replacement project. And first of all, the runway out there is primarily for our T-38s, right, which is our track for the fighter bombers.
Okay.
And those are the ones who use the outside runway.
Okay.
It's over 60 years old, so there's a lot of wear and tear on that. And when we did the...
You're setting somebody that's, you know, 60 years old, so don't say that it's so old, okay?
Well, okay, but for a runway, it can be kind of old, and it's time for replacement.
Yeah.
So what we did was we did the analysis and the engineering, and everything came through. We pulled in the resources, and we got this project. It's about a $34 million project to replace the runway for our T-38s. And overall, the duration of the project will be about 6 months, and the clock is ticking. They've already started out there, which means we should complete, barring no weather issues, we should complete and accept the runway in its full capacity about the end of November. So that's what we're looking at.
Well, we were out there earlier today, and it was a hub of activity, that's for sure.
Yes.
Everybody's really working hard. So it's nearly 60 years old, so it's time for a replacement. Sometimes when I get up in the morning, I feel like there's time for a replacement on some of my parts, if you will. I'm curious, there's a lot of weight in a T-38, a B-17, a 747, all these different aircraft have a lot of weight. So tell us about the concrete. Is it 12 inches thick, 18, or do you know those specifics for the runway for that?
So you're right. There is a lot of wear and tear, and because of the constant pounding, compression of the landing gear of these jets and aircraft, it causes some issues. So over time, you got to do something about it. Now, what's special here is that we are going to end up, we calculated that we'll pour about 11 to 13 inches of concrete on the surface and across 10,000 feet. About 10,000 feet of runway. So if you do the math on that, that's a lot of concrete.
That is a lot.
It's quite a bit. And so You know, this is not like you can, you know, when you do, say, a highway, interstate, or a road for cars and trucks, it's less complex. But here, you have to get the engineering right to make sure that you got the right strength in the concrete on the surface so it can take that wear and tear from aircraft over time.
My next question deals with a topic that's very important to the city of Enid. It's about recycling. And doing some research, Colonel, with this interview, I realized since this is a runway replacement project, you've got old asphalt, you've got old concrete,
yes, you do.
And I'm understanding there's a recycling project going on. Can you explain what that's all about?
There is, and that's a great news story as well, because you know, none of the recycling material will go to a landfill or be wasted.
Okay.
As part of the planning of standing up this project, there were arrangements made to where a lot of the asphalt and the concrete will be it'll be milled up, chunked up, or rubbleized, and it will be reused to reinforce the gravel roads on the perimeter on the base. We also have arrangements with Garfield County to reinforce some of those roads out there to do the same thing. And finally, the rest of it is going to a local business owner for commercial purposes.
Okay. Now, we've been talking about the runway replacement, if you will, but I understand some of the taxiway areas of the world are being replaced, rebuilt, whatever the term that you want to use. Why is that the case?
Well, because they're failing. And so
Okay.
there's 2 or 3 taxiways that lead out onto the outside runway. So if we're going to replace the runway, as the engineers did the study, it turns out that you might as well repair and replace those taxiways, right? So because of the risk of FOD, foreign object damage, and just the complete failure of these taxiways, we're going to go ahead, we've expanded that contract out as well to go ahead and replace those taxiways.
Okay, and once again, the length of the outside runway, how long did you say it was?
Yeah, it's roughly 10,000 feet.
10,000 feet. And I guess that's pretty much average then for a T-38, or?
For a T-38, that's about average, and that accounts for the prevailing winds being out here operating at this location. It also accounts for the temperatures, the extreme weather systems, and of course, all the technical data of the force that a T-38 produces day in, day out when it takes off or lands. And
Okay.
so the length of 10,000 feet is just about right.
Okay. Well, you've just enjoyed a brief overview of what the runway replacement project is all about with Colonel LaHaye. We'll come back and we have one more final question for the Colonel, for Paco, and we'll do that right after this. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Steve Kime, and again, thank you for staying with us on City Connections. I hope you've enjoyed our interview today with Colonel Paco LaHaye. And almost sounds like rain is in the forecast or something. But we're in Oklahoma weather, but we're in a dry spot here. One more question about the runway, Colonel. There's got to be an economic impact.
Absolutely.
We're talking asphalt and concrete and trucks and work and coordination. And you said several $1 million project. How does this all work and impact the Enid community?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, it's about a $34 million project. And so this is a great project for several reasons. First of all, you know, the mission here, the T-38 is going to benefit, right? So it's not just for the base and the longevity of the base, but there is an economic impact. $34 million oversight by the prime contractor, but what's good here is that the prime contractor, IHC, which is Interstate Highway Construction,
okay,
they have subcontracted out to many entities and local businesses around Enid. So from there's a strong outflow of resources to the city that local businesses will benefit from.
Well, speaking of resources, water is a very important resource, and we're getting some right now, and I'll take it any way that we can get it, Colonel. This is a great rain shower, and I'm sure you could probably hear some of those drops. Well, Colonel, our visit is over with, except one question. I can't let you get away without asking you this. A young person's watching this interview. They're considering the Air Force or they're considering the military. What advice would you give them, based on your experiences, to a young person that's considering joining the military?
Steve,
and you can speak to that camera right there. Or Either one of them.
I would say jump in and do it. This is absolutely an extraordinary experience. I've been in 23 years and I love every day of it. I'm inspired, especially by the young airmen that I get to work with every day. I will tell you this, first of all, my dad always said that the Air Force, so I'm biased towards the Air Force, is the Cadillac of services. And I know he's right. So I will talk in terms of if you're going to join the Air Force or the military in general. But if you read the paper and pay attention to the internet, what's going on, these are very exciting times that we live in. It's a complex world and it's a very exciting world. But I will tell you, 23 years in, I'm the old guy, right? So it's no longer my Air Force anymore. This is an Air Force for a young person. Always has been, always will be. So jump in, get involved. The military provides extraordinary opportunities to grow as a person, to just stretch yourself and accomplish very rewarding goals. You get to live in pretty cool locations. You get skill sets that are transferable on the outside there later on. And you just build up a camaraderie and a special sense of team with your folks here that you're serving with. And eventually you go on and you just build all kinds of lifetime memories.
Colonel, I think we're going to quit. Everybody's coming in. So, Colonel Paco LaHaye, thank you for your time today. Thank you for making all this happen. And I think as you hear the horns go off, that tells us we got to get out of here.
That
right?
sounds good, Steve.
Okay, Colonel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on City Connections. I look forward to seeing you next time as we again provide you a little bit different insight into a special guest and also what's going on in the community. Until next time, make it a great day.